My name is Matthew. I'm 31. After getting laid off from my job in Nashville, I decided to take some time away from city life. I needed to reset. My uncle offered me his old fishing cabin in northern Arkansas, up near Bull Shoals Lake. It wasn't much, just a 2-bedroom place with no Wi-Fi and barely any cell service. But it was free, and it was quiet. The cabin sat at the end of a long gravel road, surrounded by thick pine forest. No nearby neighbors, just the woods, the lake, and a sky full of stars. For the first few days, it was peaceful. I'd wake up early, go for hikes, and spend the evening sitting on the porch with a book or a drink. The third night was the first time something felt off. I was getting ready for bed when I noticed the front door was slightly open. I was sure I'd locked it. I always lock up. It's a habit. I brushed it off, thinking maybe I'd left it cracked and the wind pushed it open. I checked the locks twice before going to bed. The next night, I was woken up by a sound outside. It was around 2 a.m., just a soft tapping noise. It sounded like pebbles hitting the window. I sat up in bed, trying to listen. The tapping continued for a few seconds, then stopped. When I pulled back the curtain to look, no one was there. Just the dark outline of trees and the faint moonlight reflecting off the lake. The night after that, I was sitting on the porch around dusk when I saw a movement between the trees. It was quick, just a figure stepping behind a tree, maybe 30 yards out. I called out, "Hello?" But no one answered. I watched for a few minutes, but I didn't see anything else. I chalked it up to animals, maybe a deer, maybe a trick of the shadows. That night, I locked every door and window before bed. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate footsteps, the kind you only hear when someone's trying not to be heard. I lay in bed, holding my breath, listening. The footsteps moved from one side of the porch to the other, then silence. I didn't get up. I couldn't. I stayed under the covers, heart racing, until morning. I told myself I was being paranoid, cabin fever, too much isolation. But the next day, I walked the perimeter of the cabin. That's when I found something that really shook me. Handprints on the bedroom window. 2 of them, at eye level. Long, thin fingers. I measured one with my hand. It was larger than mine, maybe a man's. But the fingers were unusually long, almost unnatural. I tried to laugh it off, but it didn't sit right. That night, I brought a knife to bed with me. I didn't have a gun. I never needed one. I stayed awake until nearly 4 a.m. Nothing happened. No sounds. No movement. I finally drifted off to sleep. But the next morning, I found something worse. Out by the edge of the woods, near the tree line, someone had stacked rocks into a small pile. It hadn't been there before. On top of the pile was a single rabbit skull, bleached white. It looked like it had been placed there carefully, almost ritualistically. I took a picture with my phone and texted it to my uncle. He didn't respond until hours later. His message read, "Leave. Now." I called him, but it went to voicemail. I packed a bag that night, ready to leave first thing in the morning, but I never made it through the night. Around 2:30 a.m., I was awakened by a scratching noise. Not outside, inside the cabin. It was coming from the kitchen. Slow, light scratching. I grabbed my flashlight and crept out of the bedroom. The cabin was pitch dark. I reached the kitchen and shined the light across the room. There was nothing there, but the back door was wide open. I nearly dropped the flashlight. I had locked that door. I know I did. I slammed it shut, locked it again, and turned to go back to my room. That's when I heard the bathroom door creak open down the hall. I froze. The scratching had stopped. The cabin was dead silent. I walked slowly down the hall. every step echoing louder than the last. When I got to the bathroom, I reached out and pushed the door fully open. The room was empty, but on the bathroom mirror, written in something brownish red, were the words, "You should have stayed asleep." I bolted. I grabbed my bag, jumped into my truck, and drove through the night without stopping. I didn't even turn off the lights in the cabin. I just left. When I finally reached a gas station with reception, I called my uncle. He answered this time. He sounded shaken, but not surprised. "I should have told you," he said. "That place. I stopped going there after I found the rocks. Same ones you described. It's not just some squatter out there. There's something wrong in those woods. Something that doesn't want to be seen, but wants you to know it's watching." I haven't been back since. My uncle had the cabin torn down a few months later, said it wasn't worth the trouble. Whatever was in those woods, man, animal, or something else, it can have that land. I live in the suburbs now. I keep the lights on at night, and I still have that picture of the rock pile on my phone. Sometimes I look at it, and every time I do, I swear I see something new in the background, something that wasn't there before, something watching. I'm 17 now and live in a coastal town, but I spent most of my childhood in a quiet, mountainous village. It was one of those remote places where the air smells like pine trees, and the roads are just wide enough for one car to pass at a time. There were no streetlights, and most of the houses were old, wooden, and dimly lit. Everyone knew each other, and most of the time, people left their doors unlocked without a second thought. I was around 8 years old when this happened. My best friend at the time, let's call her Lena, and I had spent the entire afternoon playing near the stream that ran behind her grandmother's house. We were wet, hungry, and out of energy when we decided to head back toward the village square, where there was a small convenience kiosk that sold warm pastries and cheap fruit juice. Of course, we had no money with us. As we stood under the big walnut tree near the kiosk, trying to figure out how to earn a few coins, an old man walked up to us. He had a slow, dragging limp and carried a small wooden crate in his arms. His face was wrinkled, and his white beard looked like it hadn't been trimmed in weeks. But what struck me the most was how his eyes looked, completely gray, with no visible pupils. He smiled in a way that was oddly stiff, as if his skin wasn't used to making that expression. He told us he needed help carrying the crate up to his cabin at the edge of the woods, and said he'd give us some coins in return. We looked at each other and agreed. After all, it didn't sound like a big deal, and the man seemed kind enough. He even promised us some homemade apple cider once we got there. The thought of something sweet and fizzy made us instantly comply. We followed him along a narrow dirt path that branched off from the main road. The further we walked, the denser the woods became. The air felt heavier, colder. At one point, I noticed Lena walking a bit slower, her eyes darting around nervously. I asked her if she was okay, and she just nodded, whispering that the trees looked strange, too close together, almost like they were watching us. Eventually, we reached a clearing with an old cabin that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The windows were boarded up, and the wooden steps creaked with every movement. The old man turned to us and said the crate was too heavy to carry alone, and asked Lena to help him bring it inside. I stayed near the porch, unsure of what to do, until I saw a second shadow move behind the curtains. I froze. There wasn't supposed to be anyone else there. Lena hadn't noticed it, but something felt wrong. Very wrong. I called her name, but the man raised his hand and said she'd be right back. He spoke in a low, humming voice that made my stomach churn. When Lena stepped inside, the door creaked shut behind her. That's when I heard it. A low, guttural whisper from inside the cabin. Not words, just sound. I can still remember it today. It was like someone, or something, was breathing too close to her. I panicked and ran to the window, trying to peek through a crack in the boards. All I could see was Lena's back as she stood still, frozen, while the old man loomed behind her. I didn't think twice. I charged at the door and kicked it open as hard as I could. It slammed against the wall with a loud bang. Lena turned to me, her eyes wide with tears, and sprinted toward me. The man didn't follow us right away. He just stood there, still smiling that frozen smile, his eyes now completely black. We ran down the path like our lives depended on it. I didn't even know I could run that fast. Our lungs were burning, legs trembling, but we didn't stop until we reached the edge of the village. The kiosk owner saw us and came rushing over. She pulled us into the little hut and asked what had happened. I told her everything through gasping sobs. Her face grew pale. She said no one had lived in that cabin for over 30 years. The last owner had disappeared after rumors of practicing strange rituals with children. No one went near that place anymore, not even the animals. Lena and I were forbidden to wander near the woods after that. She barely spoke for days, and I couldn't sleep without the lights on for weeks. We never found out who or what that man was. And the crate, I still wonder what was inside it. I sometimes have dreams where I open it and see something I can't describe, something with eyes. Lena and I are still close. She's studying psychology now, and I joke that it probably started that very night. But even now, when we visit the village, we avoid that path completely. We never talk about what happened unless one of us has that dream again, the one with the crate and the whispering. We never found out the truth, and maybe that's for the best.